In Chapter 11, we will discuss human resource management and how finding and keeping the best employees can be one of the biggest challenges for any organization. The learning objectives for Chapter 11 is number 1, explain the importance of human resource management and describe current issues in managing human resources. Number 2, illustrate the effects of legislation on human resource management. 3, summarize the 5 steps in human resource planning. 4, describe methods that companies use to recruit new employees and explain some of the issues that make recruitment challenging. 5, outline the 6 steps in selecting employees. Learning objective number 6, illustrate employee training and development methods. 7, trace the 6 steps in appraising employee performance. 8, summarize the objectives of employee compensation programs and evaluate pay systems and fringe benefits. 9, demonstrate how managers use scheduling plans to adapt to workers' needs. And finally, describe how employees can move through a company via promotion, reassignment, termination, and retirement. The textbook has an interesting write-up of Cynthia Marshall, CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. If you're interested in learning more about her and how her career helped her develop a diversity and inclusion strategy that set up some real innovative policies, check out the article on page 273 of the text. Companies struggle to attract the most qualified applicants. One of the ways that they do attract these applicants and keep them is by offering fringe benefits. So let's play and name that company. So this company, in order to attract the most qualified applicants, provided employees with fringe benefits like free meals, arcade video games, on-site laundry, and boy, who wouldn't want to have that? Discounts on automobiles, travel, hotels, and other perks. Can you name that company? If you said Facebook, you're absolutely right. Human resource management, or HRM, is the process of determining human resource needs like recruiting, selecting, developing, motivating, evaluating, compensating, and scheduling employees to achieve your organizational goals. In the past, they called human resources personnel, mainly because it was more of a clerical function versus really trying to make sure that you're developing the needs of the employees, not just processing paperwork. So some of the ways that HR had evolved recently are 2 things. One is to develop the organization's recognition of employees as their ultimate resource. One of the things that the owner of the company I work for says all the time, your employees are your best salespeople. So if you don't take care of those employees that you have when you're trying to recruit or getting word of mouth about your company out there, you're not going to get that advertising of your company being one of the best places for an employee to work, which in turn goes against your ability to recruit employees or even retain from that perspective. And the other key factor on how HR has changed over the years are how the changes in the laws that rewrote the traditional practices affected companies. So we'll discuss this and more as we go through the slides. Human resource management is more than just hiring employees. It involves a lot of different tasks and responsibilities. This slide gives some insight into the various roles of human resources and how the department has assumed responsibility for their employees. Business leaders and many companies now understand the effect management of human capital can have in creating competitive advantage in the marketplace. So the different areas that human resources touches is recruitment, selection, training and development, motivation, evaluation, career progression, compensation and benefits, scheduling, etc. This slide shows that the HR department can help or hurt your career. Some folks will approach HR with every little problem they encounter. However, the decline in employment, HR departments are often under pressure to get more pressing things taken care of. If you want to succeed in a company, make sure your HR staff knows you and likes you. They can help you move up. One reason the role of human resource management has grown is that there was a shift from traditional manufacturing industries to now we're more service and high-tech manufacturing industries in the US, which requires businesses to hire workers with highly technical job skills. As we talked about in the last slide, people are truly the ultimate resource. They develop the ideas that eventually become products or services that satisfies consumers' wants and needs. In the past, human resources were plentiful, so there were a little need for nurture and to develop them. If you needed qualified people, you simply hired more. If you didn't, if they didn't work out, then you would just fire them and find others. Today, the job human resource management has taken on a new role in the firm since qualified employees are even more scarcer due to an increase in jobs that require advanced or specialized training. The shortage of qualified workers makes recruiting and retaining people more important and more difficult than ever. When we think about human resource challenges, let's think about all the different demographic changes. Demographic changes are creating a challenging environment for HR managers, requiring them to come up with more creative ways to attract, develop, and retain employees. So as far as the demographic challenges, we've got uncertainty in global politics, technology, multi-generational workforce, shortages of trained workers in growth areas and construction trades, growing percentage of undereducated and unprepared new workers, baby boomer brain drain, increasing number of single parent and two income families, change in attitudes towards work. And we've seen that a lot during and after the pandemic of people really, really wanting that work-life balance and being able to juggle, and have, that balance. And then going on to increased demand for temporary or part-time work, expanding global markets with low-wage workers, increased benefit demands and low costs, concerns over child and elder care, health, mental well-being, and workplace violence, changing healthcare regulations, a decreased sense of employee loyalty, and automated HRMS systems. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a significant piece of legislation and directly brought the federal government into human resource management. Title VII prohibits discrimination in hiring, firing, compensation, apprenticeships, training, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment based on race, religion, creed, sex, national origin, age, sexual discrimination, and gender identity. The Equal Employment Opportunity Act of 1972, or the EEOA, strengthened the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and authorized the EEOC to set guidelines for human resource management. So as a part of this act, it gave employers the right to issue workplace guidance regarding what's acceptable as far as employer conduct. It also can mandate specific record-keeping procedures as well as enforce the mandates. The enforcement of affirmative action means employment activities are designed to right past wrong by increasing the opportunities for minorities and women. Continuing on with the laws that are affecting human resource management, next is Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, or the OFCCP. This compliance program ensures that employees are doing business with the federal government have to comply with the non-discrimination and affirmative action laws. And then we also have the Civil Rights Act of 1991 that expands the remedies available to victims of discrimination by amending Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now victims of discrimination have the right to a jury trial and punitive damages. Human resources managers must follow court decisions closely to see how the laws are enforced. Additional laws that affect human resource management are laws that protect employees with disabilities and older employees. The Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973 extended protection to people with physical or mental disability. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or the ADA, requires employers to give applicants with physical or mental disabilities the same consideration for employment as people without disabilities. The ADA also protects individuals with disabilities from discrimination in public accommodations, transportation, schools, and all public and private places open to the general public. In the workplace, the ADA requires making reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities, such as modifying equipment or widening doorways. Most companies have no trouble making structural changes to be accommodating. However, at times, such changes can be difficult for a small business. Employers used to think that being fair and reasonable meant treating everyone the same, but accommodation, in fact, means treating people according to their specific needs. Accommodations are not always expensive. An inexpensive headset can allow someone with cerebral palsy to talk on the phone. In 2008, Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Amendment Act, which overturned the Supreme Court's decision that had reduced protections for people with certain disabilities like diabetes, epilepsy, heart disease, autism, major depression, and cancer. But in 2011, the EEOC issued regulations that widened the range of disabilities covered by the ADA and shifted the burden of proof of disability in labor disputes from employees to business owners. Enforcement of this law promises to be a continuing issue for human resources management. As we discussed, the ADA does guarantee that all U.S. workers have the equal opportunity to employment. The legislation requires businesses to make those reasonable accommodations on the job for people with disabilities. Now, in this particular slide where you see a man in front of the escalator, what do you think would be a reasonable accommodation in this situation? Well, to me, the obvious would be an elevator. However, not all companies are built for elevators. So how would you handle that kind of a situation? The Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, or the ADEA, protects individuals age 40 or older from employment and workplace discrimination in hiring, firing, promotion, layoff, compensation, benefits, job assignment, and training. The ADEA, enforced by the EEOC, applies to employers with 20 or more employees and protects both employees and the job applicants. Now, there's some current debating over the legislation in these areas. So, you'll continue to see debates over this over time. The ADEA outlaws mandatory retirement in most organizations. It does, however, allow age restrictions for certain types of job categories, like an airline pilot or a bus driver, if there's evidence to show that their age is causing performance issues that could cause danger to society. Because of all the laws and regulations regarding human resource management, employers have to know the law and act accordingly. They can't just come in and say, oh, we didn't know. You have to be aware of it, because if you don't, it could cause some real harm to a business if the business isn't operating and adhering to the laws. Let's review. Human resource management is the process of determining the needs of the organization and then recruiting, selecting, developing, motivating, evaluating, compensating and scheduling employees to achieve organizational goals. Title VII prohibits discrimination in hiring, firing, compensating apprenticeships, training, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment based on race, religion, creed, sex, or national origin. At a later date, age discrimination was added to the Act. The Equal Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, was created by the Civil Rights Act. The EEOC was permitted to issue guidelines for acceptable employer conduct and administering equal employment opportunity. Affirmative action is the most controversial policy in the EEOC and was designed to right past wrongs by increasing opportunities for minorities and women. Employers are required to make reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities, such as modifying equipment and widening doorways. As with any process, when you're planning for the needs of human resources, there's 5 steps. So the planning process starts with preparing a human resource inventory of employees, then preparing a job analysis. Then step 3 would be assessing future human resource demand, as well as assessing future labor supply, and finally establishing a strategic plan for human resources. Preparing a human resource inventory of an organization's employees includes information in the inventory like ages, names, education, capabilities, training, specialized skills, and other relevant information like languages spoken. This kind of inventory reveals whether the labor force is technically up to date and thoroughly trained. Next, in order to determine human resource needs, is to conduct a job analysis. A job analysis is a study of what employees do who hold various job titles. It's necessary in order to recruit and train employees with the necessary skills to do the job. The results of job analysis are 2 written statements, a job description, and job specification. A job description specifies the objectives of the job, the type of work, the responsibilities and duties, working conditions, and job relationships to other functions. Job specifications are written summaries of descriptions about the job, like minimal education, skills the person needs to do a job. We talked about the need for a job analysis. This screen is just an example of a job analysis. This job analysis yields 2 important statements, the job description and the job specification. Here on this example, you have a job description and specifications for a salesperson. So as you can see under job analysis, the 3 bullet points are observe current sales representatives doing a job, discuss job with sales managers, and have current sales reps keeping a diary of their activities. So then you go into that job description that really gives you the details about that job, showing the primary objective, also going into the responsibilities of introducing the new products to store managers, helping store managers estimate volume, negotiating prime shelf space, etc. And then you go into the specifications that's really more about the person. Now you're looking at characteristics of the person that might make them qualified, like 2 years of sales experience, a positive attitude, good communication skills, etc. Part of recruiting people is to ensure that there's a diverse population of applicants to recruit from, as well as a diverse population of employees. By having a sufficient number of diverse candidates with the right job specifications and experience ensures that HR has candidates that are at the right type of people that are available at the right time to be hired into the organization. The way that HR could do this, there's a number of recruitment ways that they can do this. Sometimes it's just a matter of internal referrals, but also different tools outside of the organization, like Glassdoor, Indeed, and LinkedIn allows HR to recruit employees from a wide spread of backgrounds in diverse populations. Job candidates can come from internal and external sources. In order to attract qualified employees from external sources, many employees offer referral bonuses to employees that refer new employees to the company. I know with the company that I work for, they're pretty hefty referral bonuses because the owner of the company really takes pride in the employees that we have, and we feel like the best new employee is one from a trusted employee that's already at the company. Human resource managers today have the opportunity to recruit people from a wide range of cultural and ethnic backgrounds. What do you think there are some advantages of having a workforce that is diverse does for a company? So having a diverse workforce allows a company to reach more stakeholders. And when you say stakeholders, it's anyone that might benefit from a company's products or services. So that could be employees, that could be customers, that could be vendors, it could be anyone. So as an example, think about having women in the workforce. It allows a company to know how to develop and market products directly towards women. With a more diverse workforce, a company also has the ability to attract and retain talent, and it allows employees to feel empowered and engage more in their work. Ultimately, the more diverse your workforce is, means that if you're meeting the needs of stakeholders from all different races, genders, cultures, etc., it allows a company to make more of a profit by serving the needs of everyone in the community. So part of the recruitment process is just gathering information from all of the applicants, deciding who should be hired, under what legal guidelines, and for the best interest of the individual and the organization. So the steps to those selection processes are, first is to complete applications, conduct initial and follow-up interviews, give employee tests, conduct background investigations, and in some instances obtain results from physical exams, and establishing a trial or probationary period. All right, so this is a pretty interesting slide. So the information that you put out on social media or have as a digital footprint has become a major part of your public persona. So from what I'm told in the HR department, when the recruiters are looking at an applicant very seriously, they're going to go out and they're going to do some social media checks. I mean, they're almost obsessed with trying to find information out on the web for their applicants. So basically, you want to make sure that anything that you can find when you Google your name doesn't look bad on you. And unfortunately, you know, in today's times, when something gets out on the internet, it never goes away. So you just want to make sure to be mindful of all the information that you put out there, because one day it could come back to you when it comes to being hired into that company that you really want to work for. So this slide represents the areas where job applicants make the most mistakes. The first one is directions aren't followed. Pieces of the application are left blank. A cover letter or your resume aren't submitted or tailored to the job. So you can't have a resume that is a one-size-fit-all kind of resume. You actually sometimes have to go in and make changes to your resume to make sure it really is similar to the job description that you're submitting your application. Also, you might not be qualified for the job. Now, some might argue that you might have most of the qualifications, but you're missing a few of the qualifications is not a problem. That for me, typically if I'm leaving a job, it's because I want to move on. I want to step up in my career, and maybe I want to learn new things, and there might be something on the job description that catches my eye. So I might not have 100% of the qualifications, but for me, if I'm the employer, you know, I want to be able to develop certain things that are specific to my organization. So sometimes that's not a big deal, but it really just depends on the hiring manager. Also, on your application, not being able to explain employment gaps or lying about them, or if an applicant undersells themselves. And the big thing for me is poor grammar. Moving on with the selection of employees that'll be productive, let's talk about hiring contingent workers. Contingent workers are those kind of employees or workers that aren't expecting a regular job or full-time employees. So this might be part-time employees, temp workers, seasonal workers, independent contractors or freelancers, interns or co-op students. There's about 15 million contingent workers in the US under the age of 25, and we're starting to hear more about that as we think about the gig economy, where a single project or task for which a worker is hired often in the digital marketplace to work on demand. Now, we're also seeing this in every kind of profession there is. Like, for instance, I'm in the finance area. I get calls regularly to see if I'm interested in taking on projects as a consultant to earn some extra money, which it sounds great, but when you already work 40 to 50 hours a week, it's just a lot to add on to your day. Typically, we see companies hiring contingent workers based on need when, say, their full-time employees are on leave. So say their employees are on an extended leave. Maybe they're on maternity leave or they've had some kind of surgery. It could be a million different things. Sometimes they hire contingent workers from a temporary agency that these employees only come in for a certain amount of time. Also, like if you think about places like Target, Walmart, it's these kind of organizations, they have peak demand. Say, think about Black Friday or Christmas shopping. That's when they're hiring those contingent workers. In uncertain economic times, a lot of times you'll see employers lay off people. And then when things start ramping back up, then they might pull in those contingent workers in order to get ramped back up for more peak demand. And then also, some companies think hiring contingent workers will save them money by not having to pay employee benefits. But what we find at the company that I work for, that it's such a specialized field that you may save on some benefits and costs, but many of the contingent workers that come in and contract with us make so much on the hour, it's not saving us anything. And then also, you'll see contingent workers when they're screening candidates for future employees. And I've even heard of employers hiring people on a contingency, basically a trial period before they'll commit to hiring you. So it's interesting to see the way employers are changing the way they bring on employees and workers into their organization. As I mentioned, companies normally hire those contingent workers, especially in the retail field, where those are, temporary workers to help them get through, Christmas shopping, or say, for instance, in a flower shop during Valentine's Day, they might bring on some of those contingent or temp workers. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages to you, or would you think of hiring contingent workers? For me, my thought is a disadvantage would be if I'm going in to work at a company just temporarily, I might not put my best foot forward and really give the company my best effort. An advantage would be potentially saving costs, like we talked about on the last slide, or even being able to ramp up quickly to get employees in there so that we can serve the customer. So as we talked about with the contingent workers, some of the reasons why they're hired is because they don't always receive benefits and accept lower pay. So many of the companies might include college students as contingent workers through temporary staffing agency. But like we talked, in some organizations, sometimes it's not lower pay that brings those contingent workers in. Sometimes it's just a matter of being able to have bodies to do the work, to get the output to the customers. And they're willing to pay more than what they would do an employee, but keeping in mind, excuse me, that the contingent worker might also have additional taxes. So in their mind, they're not making more than the actual employee because they're paying additional taxes by being a contingent employee. They also have to be responsible for paying for their own employee benefits and so on. Let's review. The 5 steps in human resource planning are: 1, planning a human resource inventory of the organization's employees; 2, preparing a job analysis; 3, assessing future human resource demand; 4, assessing future labor supply; and finally, number 5, establishing a strategic plan. Some factors that make it difficult to recruit qualified employees include organizational policies that demand promotions from within, unions, regulations, and low wages. The 6 steps in the selection process are: 1, obtaining a complete application form; 2, conducting initial and follow-up interviews; 3, giving employment tests; 4, conducting background investigations; 5, obtaining results from physical exams; and 6, establishing a trial period. Contingent workers include part-time workers, temp workers, seasonal workers, independent contractors, interns, and co-op students. Contingent workers are sometimes hired in an uncertain economic climate when full-time workers are on leave, when there is peak demand or labor or products, and finally, when quick service is necessary. The term training and development includes all attempts to improve productivity by increasing an employee's ability to perform. A well-designed training program often leads to higher retention rates, increased productivity, and greater job satisfaction. Employers in the United States generally find that money for training is well spent. Training focuses on short-term skills, whereas development focuses on long-term abilities. Both include 3 steps. The first is assessing an organizational needs and employee skills to determine training needs. Second, design training activities to meet identified needs. And third, evaluating the training's effectiveness. The most common training and development activities are orientation, on-the-job training, apprenticeships, off-the-job training, online training, vestibule training, and job simulation. An example of orientation: at Zappos, every new employee in the online retailer's Henderson, Nevada headquarters must spend 2 weeks answering customer calls, 2 weeks learning in a classroom, and a week shipping boxes in the company's Kentucky fulfillment center. This allows people to know how the business really operates. This slide represents job simulation. So an example is where firefighters learn how to deal with the dangers of a burning building by simulating and training environments. This allows some people to be ready when danger might occur of being a fireman. Can you think of other kind of professions where employees might benefit from job simulation? For me, I could think of one off the top of my head, which might be customer service. Practicing talking to customers on the phone and answering their questions. Can you think of any other kind of simulations that might help with training? Another form of training is management development. So that is really just the process of training and educating employees to become good managers, or managers to develop their skills of management even further. Some of those training includes the on-the-job coaching, understudy positions, job rotation, and off-the-job course training. This slide represents why good employees quit. So unhappy with the management represents 35%, 33% is limited advancement, 13% represents no recognition, 13, which is in purple, is inadequate salary and benefits, which, as you can see, that's a pretty low percentage compared to the limited advancement or being unhappy with management or not getting recognition for a job well done. And then 1% is boredom, and then 5% is no specific reason. It's important for managers to understand why employees leave a company. Basically, it translates directly to the bottom line of an organization. The higher the turnover, the higher the costs are for recruiting, selecting, training, and development. It's been said, and I can't quote anybody specific on this, but when an employee leaves, it takes about a full salary of that employee to train a new employee to be able to do the job fully. What are the other reasons why employee retention is important? Some of them are because of morale for other workers, ability to recruit more people so that if you show your retention is, 98%, some employees are going to want to come work at your organization. And then also if you have that revolving door of employees, it's going to look bad on the company. Would you like to work at a place that feels like employees go through a revolving door? Probably not. I know that for me, when I start seeing some of the higher level employees leave, it makes me feel nervous, especially in a time where the economy is so uncertain. But sometimes it might just be because they're retiring. They've gotten to the age where they're ready to just step back. But other times it makes you worry about the stability of the company. So it's really important to make sure that those good employees do stay. So some of the other ways of ensuring that employees are at optimum performance is networking. So networking could be great for a couple different reasons. One, when you work in your profession, sometimes it's nice to network and know other people that do the same jobs. That way you can go back to them and ask them questions about processes within your organizations to see, how people in your network actually handle a process at a like organization. Another way that networking is helpful for you is if you are looking to leave a company and you're looking to better yourself, knowing somebody at the organization where you might want to go to gets a foot in the door and gives you help in getting into that organization. Also, mentoring is also really important, especially for new employees just coming out of college. It's important to have a mentor, which is typically somebody that's experienced in the organization, that coaches, and just answers general questions about the organizations. You can also have outside mentors as well. Networking and mentoring definitely go beyond the work environment. As we had spoke, networking definitely helps outside of the organization. You can use tools like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are all great ways to network and talk to key managers in and outside of the organization. Informal networking can be done in a lot of different ways. One that we use within the organization is happy hour. From time to time, we'll have a happy hour that we really encourage the new hires to not just get involved with going to, but also helping plan them. They get to know other people within the organization, whether they're just as new as you are or people that have been there for a while. It helps them to get to know more people at the organization. Another way might be professional meetings. You go to the meetings to learn something, but then there's also a lot of networking opportunities to get to know people outside of the organization. Today, more women are working in the paid workforce than men. As more women moved into management, they learned the importance of networking and having mentors. Unfortunately, women often have more difficulty than men in networking or finding mentors since most senior managers are male. Companies that take advantage on the initiative to develop female and minority managers understands 3 crucial principles. 1. Grooming women and minorities for management positions are about legality, morality, or even morale, but rather about bringing more talent in the door, which is the key to long-term profitability. The best women and minorities will become harder to attract and retain. So, companies that commit to development early have an edge. Having more women and minorities at all levels lets businesses serve their increasingly female and minority customers well. If you don't have diversity of people working in the back rooms, how are you going to satisfy those people that are becoming your customers through the front door. One of the things that helps with appraising employees' performance to get optimum results is the performance appraisal. Managers must be able to determine whether their workers are doing an effective and efficient job with minimum errors and disruptions. This is done by the performance appraisal, which is an evaluation that measures employee performance against established standards in order to make decisions about promotions, compensation, training, and termination. Performance appraisals have 6 steps: establishing performance standards, communicating those standards, evaluating performance, discussing results with employees, taking corrective action, and using the results to make a decision. Managing effectively means getting results through top performance. That's what performance appraisals are for at all levels of the organization, including the top, where managers benefit from reviews by employees and peers. In the 360-degree review, management gathers opinions from all around the employee, including those under, above, and on the same level, to get an accurate, comprehensive idea of a worker's abilities. The performance management strategy allows workers to receive continuous real-time feedback via particularly tools like mobile apps that are focused on helping employees meet goals and meet them faster. As we discussed in the last slide, those 6 steps for performance appraisals that help with employee performance are establishing those performance standards that are understandable, measurable, and reasonable, and clearly communicating those standards, because if the employees are not understanding the standards, they're not going to be able to perform to meet those goals. Then evaluating the performance against the standards, discussing those results. And that's one of the most important things, is discussing the results. Because if you're not honest with your employees about their performance, they can't make any corrections or do better. And then the other real difficult part is making those corrective actions. So one of the most difficult things to deal with is telling an employee that they're not doing well, and letting them know what they need to do to fix it. And then again, evaluating that performance against, some of those corrective actions. I'm actually going through this right now with an employee to where it's taken this person a really long time to get into the groove of her job and really engage with the organization without interrupting other people's work processes. So I've had to meet with her regularly in order to discuss how she's doing, and also to coach her in the right way to behave when things don't happen the way she expects to happen. And then using the results from all that coaching and counseling to make decisions on whether you want that employee to stay or whether it's time to terminate that employee. I wanted to go over pretty quickly the uses for performance appraisals. We talked a little bit about it in the last slide, but this is some of the areas that might come out of appraisals of an employee. Identifying that additional training might be needed. Using the performance appraisals as a promotion tool. So if you've got an employee that's doing really well, you're going to use the performance as a way to document their successes in order to at some point promote them either at that time or later. And then also to recognize a worker's achievement, evaluate the firm's hiring process. So for instance, if you're evaluating somebody that's doing poorly, you're going to have to let HR know that the candidate that they put forward really just didn't have what they needed in order to do the job to benefit the company. Also, judging the effectiveness of the orientation process. Does the employee understand all the different systems that they were trained during orientation? And then again, as I spoke to in the last slide, the appraisals might be a place where you discuss or think about possible termination of employee that's just not getting the work or progressing within the organization the way you would like them to. This slide talks about a little bit of the problems that managers might have when giving performance appraisals to employees. The first one is the contrast effect, comparing one employee to another. This isn't really fair in some respects because everybody works differently. However, when you think of an output of what a particular position should be doing, you should look at several different employees to get an idea of what the average output should be, and then do some kind of a contrast there. The other one is halo or the horn effect, and that's allowing performances in specific areas to unfairly influence an overall performance evaluation. So let me give you an example of that. So I believe in the past couple slides I had mentioned how I had an employee that has really struggled to engage in the organization and really produce the way we wanted this person to. So the evaluation period was from July 1 of 21 through June 30th, 2022. In that period, she was really struggling to do her job and remember all of her training. But all of a sudden, when I was doing the evaluation, it was like a light switch went off, and now all of a sudden she's producing great. However, the evaluation period was from prior to when she started doing better. So I can't allow what has just happened recently to affect how I review this person for the review period, which was July 1, 21 through June 30, 2022. So there's a real fine line when you're giving that evaluation to make sure you address the issue during the review period, but also to let the employee know that they're doing good now. So, and then to continue the work in order to get that person to stay engaged and continue to progress. And then the other one is similar to me effect, the generosity to those you feel are more like you. So this just got to make sure that you're not giving somebody better appraisals just because they're similar to your work ethic or similar to somebody else's. Let's review. Name and describe 4 training techniques. Off-the-job training occurs away from the workplace and consists of internal or external programs to develop any of a variety of skills or to foster personnel development. An apprenticeship program involves a student or apprentice working alongside an experienced employee to master the skills and procedures of a craft. Vestibule training or near-the-job training is done in a classroom with equipment similar to that used on the job, so employees learn proper methods and safety procedures before assuming a specific job assignment. Job simulation is the use of equipment that duplicates job conditions and tasks so trainees can learn skills before attempting them on the job. The primary purpose of a performance evaluation is to determine whether workers are doing an effective and efficient job with a minimum of errors and disruptions. The 6 steps in performance appraisal are 1, establishing performance standards, communicating those standards, evaluating performance, discussing results with employees, taking corrective action, and finally using the results to make decisions. All right, so let's face it, money talks. And when you're talking about employees attracting and keeping the best, compensation is one of the main tools that companies use to attract those employees, and one of the biggest costs as well. So if you think about it, companies don't just compete for customers, they compete for employees. Compensation is that main tool. And one of, again, the biggest costs. The long-term success of a firm, perhaps even its survival, may depend on how well it can control employee costs and optimize employee efficiency. So when you're thinking about companies that need specialized employees, it can be very competitive with recruiting those kind of employees with the skills that you need with other people within the industry, which can make your employee cost super high. A carefully managed and competitive compensation and benefit program can accommodate several objectives. One is attracting the kind of people the organization needs in sufficient numbers, providing employees with the incentive to work efficiently and productively, keeping valued employees from going to competitors and starting competing firms. And finally, maintaining a competitive position in the marketplace is keeping costs low through high productivity from a satisfied workforce. Many companies still use the pay structure known as the Hay method, devised by Edward Hay. This plan is based on job grades, each of which have strict pay ranges. The system is set up on a point basis with three key factors: knowledge, problem solving, and accountability. The most commonly used pay structure is market-based, where companies use market-based pay structures to compensate their employees, regardless of their level of the organizations. A lot of companies will research what other firms are paying and decide to pay them the same, more, or less. So, and this is a lot of what our company that I work for deals with, is our cost for compensation just continues to rise just because the market shows that the range of pay for certain positions is so high that we have to do it or we just can't recruit employees. So as we've talked about in the previous slides, that competitive compensation and benefits have a really big effect on employee efficiency and productivity. And sometimes businesses do reward for exceptional performance, like with bonuses. So every year we typically do a merit increase for salary, and that's typically like a cost of living increase and also based on performance. But if the company performs well, there's also opportunity for employees to get bonuses as well. So think about it. You know, does the bonus pay off? Does it help the business by making employees, you know, work more efficiency and then also improve productivity? I would argue yes, because if the company is performing well, then the employees must be doing something right. So do you think that instructors should also reward bonuses for exceptional performance by giving things like extra credit? I mean, we see this all the time. I mean, I can remember in elementary school, high school, and even college getting extra credit for going above and beyond in class. So I think, as you might know, that, you know, those bonuses do help with performance. So let's talk about pay systems. So when you're thinking about taking another job, you want to think about a lot of things involved with your compensation. So typically when you think of a compensation package, it's not just your salary that you get paid biweekly, monthly, or even weekly. It's also your benefits. It also could be bonuses. It also could be your benefits. So just think about all those different things. Also, you know, just to think about hourly wage or day work. The wage is based on the number of hours or days worked, which is typically used in most of the blue collar and clerical workers. Then we've also got the piece work system, where wage is based on the number of items produced rather than being paid by the hour or the day. Another type of pay system is commission. So that's pay that's typically used for salespeople. So you get paid based on some percentage of your sales. And that, you know, incentivizes salespeople to work harder. Again, the bonuses that we talked about, it's extra pay for, you know, being extra efficient or performing well. There's two types. There could be monetary or cashless. Money is always obviously a big bonus. Cashless might be rewards such as an extra day off, a thank you note, or even a gift certificate for your favorite restaurant, or to do some shopping. Also, another way to compensate employees is by profit sharing plans. So this is basically done after the company determines how profitable it was for the year. It's basically a performance-based pay. Not all companies have it, But I know if you are lucky enough to find one, especially if it's a good one, a company that offers profit sharing, definitely jump at it. So the two types of pay systems on this slide I'm not as familiar with. One is called gain sharing. It's an annual bonus paid to employee based on achieving specific goals like quality measures, customer satisfaction, etc. The other one is stock options. This is a right for employees to purchase stock at a company at a specific price, and that price is typically a lot less than what other people outside of the organization can purchase the stock. And then at some point, after a certain waiting period, you can even sell that stock at the going rate that people outsiders would pay to make a profit. Generally, when you sell, it would probably go back to the organization, but it's definitely an opportunity to really be compensated for your efforts at an organization. There's other ways of compensating, especially when you have teams. Team-based pay programs are more challenging than those individual systems. The two most common methods are skill-based and gain sharing. Skill-based pay is increased when teams learn and apply new skills. Gain sharing bases team bonuses on improvements over previous performance. A company called Nucor Steel calculates bonuses on quality. Tons of steel that go out the door with no defects. There are no limits on bonuses. A team can earn, they usually average about $20,000 per year just for making sure that they're doing quality work and getting quality products out the door. When we think about employer benefits, we would also think about what's called fringe benefits. The rising cost of health care and the cost of employer-provided health insurance is unsustainable long-term. This requires both management and employees to create systems that keep costs down but still provide meaningful coverage. This can include employee wellness programs or even higher deductibles. Going along with the fringe benefits that could be offered are sick leave, vacation, pension plans, health plans that represent additional compensation to employees above and beyond their base wages. So an example of this would be, so the company I work for just recently went to a high deductible plan, which means that when you go to the doctor, you have to pay out of pocket a lot more before insurance begins to cover in its entirety. And so what they did on this high deductible plan is offer an additional bit of compensation, which is called an HSA, or high deductible savings plan. And they give the employers the ability to save the difference of what a traditional medical plan would cost and the lower cost of the high deductible plan. So you can put it in this health savings account. But in addition to that, the company also contributes up to $1,200 a year. So this would be a part of the wages that are above and beyond. In 1929, fringe benefits accounted for less than 2%. Today, it's over 30% of a payroll cost. Healthcare is definitely the most significant cost when we think about fringe benefit costs. And I know the company I work for, we've gone through so many different kinds of plans just trying to keep costs down for employees and the employer, because, you know, as an employer, the company has to be able to make a profit, and they need to sustain their costs, and they want to make their employees happy. So we're constantly looking for ways to have savings for everyone. There's lots of fringe benefits that you can get from many different companies. For instance, if you work at McDonald's, you might get a free meal or a percentage off meals when you eat at that organization. So on this slide, it talks about how employees at DreamWorks, who helped create a hit animated franchise, get perks like free breakfast, lunch, afternoon yoga, etc. How do you think that these fringe benefits affect employee performance? For me, it's the little things that matter. So sometimes the fringe benefits that I get at the organization where I work is we get free lunches. A lot of times they'll give us lunch coupons to where we can go to the restaurants in our building and eat for free up to $10 or $15. Other things they might do is give us sweatshirts with the company's name. So it's kind of a twofold. It's a marketing for the company, but it's also a sweatshirt that you can wear instead of having to buy something to wear to work. So think about how fringe benefits might encourage you to perform well. So let's continue to talk about fringe benefits. Some companies have some pretty cool fringe benefits, and it's really a game on how they come up with these ideas and in order to help retain employees. So on this slide, it talks about incentives like company cars, paid and unpaid sabbaticals, daycare, elder care services, and helping with student loan debt, which is a really big topic right now. Soft benefits are like free haircuts, meals at work. I talked about that, and concierge services. So for me, this is one of those things that I've suggested at our company because most people that work at the company I work for are putting in a lot of hours. So just having a concierge to help them navigate through that work-life balance goes a long way. Helps them save time, energy, stress. And then also cafeteria style fringe benefits, like I was telling you how sometimes my company gives us coupons to eat at the restaurants in our organization. It really, I mean, it saves you money in general. This slide represents a comparison of the number of vacation days given and used per year in different countries. The UK leads with the most vacation days per year, whereas Canada and Japan tie for the last with just 10 days. Even though the US comes in low with only 14 vacation days and 10 public holidays, an interesting fact is that most Americans don't even use all of their time. And at the company I work for, we see this all the time. In fact, when I do employee orientation, one of the things I go over is payroll and time off, and of course, other finance related activities. One thing that my employer gives as a benefit is a floating holiday. We have to remind people to use that floating holiday because that particular benefit, if you don't use those 8 hours during the year, you will lose them. And I see multiple times every year people not taking this one day off. It's like a free day. And then in addition to that, most employees come into the companies, they start out with 3 weeks of vacation. Now, we have people that use every bit of it, but there's still several people that never use all their vacation time. So then that allows them, the company will allow them to carry over 80 hours every year. But then you think about it, if they're not even using up the 3 hours or the 3 weeks that they're given, you add 2 more for carryover, it's going to be consistent, carryover. So a lot of times businesses have to put in even additional rules in on time off. So another way to keep your global workforce happy is to make sure that you're considering the country-specific cultural and legal standards when thinking about your human resources functions. So one of the things that they do at my company, because we are a global company, is that everybody's paid based on, first of all, their expertise, but also the standards within the countries that they work in. So as you can see, some of the examples include compensation, pension standards, health, paid time off, taxation, communication, and there's just regulatory requirements. So it's really important for HR to keep up to date on what these needs are from that global workforce, especially, overseas, because there's a cultural impact. And if you're not meeting the needs of your employees of other cultures, you're probably not going to be able to retain and then potentially not recruit in the future. So another way to recruit, retain employees is by offering flex time plans. This is really important, not just for employees that have families, but also for people that don't. So that way they have the flexible time in order to do things like go to your nephew's soccer game, or being able to volunteer at an organization that means a lot to you. Some of the flex time allows employees just to be at their jobs during core times of the day, which we'll see on the next chart. As long as all employees are there at those core times, employees a lot of times are flexible with the shifts that they work. And then, communications to these employees also make sure that that flex time works out well for the organization and all the employees. Flex time gives employees some freedom and empowers them to work when it best meets their needs. The benefits are obvious and often lead to a more motivated workforce. At this particular company, as illustrated on the slide, employees can start work anytime between 6:30 and 9:30. They take a half hour for lunch between 11 and 1:30, and then they can leave anywhere from 3 to 6:30. Everyone has to work an 8-hour day. If you take a look at the blue arrows, it shows a typical employee's flex time. So as you can see, Sarah starts at 7. She takes her lunch between 11 and 11:30, and then her time that she gets off is at 3:30. So it all is in between those lines that you see, the purple lines, which are between 6:30 and 6:30. So included in flex time is also a compressed work week. And what this is basically an employee is working full-time hours, but maybe in fewer days than the standard work week. So for instance, if you think about nurses, a lot of times nurses work their full-time shifts within 3 days. That's pretty standard within the nursing field. And then also when you have on-call scheduling, it entails employees calling in or canceling workers with little notice. I'm not going to go into details on this particular slide, but if you want to pause and read through it, it's great. But basically talks about, would you rather work 9 to 5 or 8 to 1? And it talks about this company, Reinigen's Digital Enabler in Germany, how they reduced their hours to 5 hours from the standard 8. So it's worth reading about just to get an idea of how other companies or organizations work with their employees to not only, build their performance and their satisfaction with their job, but also makes their company more profitable. As you know, home-based work is becoming more and more common, and this is really important in meeting the needs of your employees. 44% of Americans work from home at least once per week or more. I know my organization allows employees that are performing well, been at the company for at least 3 months, and then aren't customer forward facing, allow them to work 2 days from home. They typically can choose their own hours. But they are not allowed to keep their kids at home with them. They have to send their kids either to school or childcare, so they're not interrupting their daily work. One of the things that I am privileged with is, again, I work 2 days a week from home, and a lot of times I'll break my day up just in order to be able to pick my daughter up from school or take her to school or to, swim practice or something. Employers typically benefit from home-based work because it limits employees' absences and increases that productivity and really saves money, because the less facilities that you have to pay for in order to house employee, there's more profit. Companies also offer what's called hot desking, or sharing a desk with employees who work at different times. Now, this isn't something that my company does, but it's something that's been suggested. Since we are a global company, we see that it's very standard in other countries for employees to share offices or even desks for those that aren't in the office full time. As you might remember from the COVID pandemic, we recently had, it forced employees to work from home. I mean, there wasn't a choice in order to keep organizations running when there was, everybody was not allowed to leave their house. But one thing to consider when you are working from home, it does require a lot of discipline in order to stay focused on your job and not be distracted. So thinking about working from home, do you think that's something you could do? I mean, I know that you're taking this class and doing it electronically, potentially from home. So you do have to be pretty disciplined. So do you think as a full-time home-based employer that you could be productive and be disciplined enough to stay focused? It's not for everybody, but it's something to consider. There's lots of benefits and challenges to home-based work. I'm not going to go through all of these on figure 11.7, but you can find them on page 296 of your text. But keep in mind, there's definitely some challenges, and you've got to train your employees and your managers to be able to manage home-based work and to ensure that productivity is increased, and gives the ability to broaden talent pool, etc. This slide continues from the previous slide on the benefits and challenges of home-based work. So this talks more about the benefits and challenges for individuals. So some of them are just obvious cost, time saving, things like that. But then also that some of the challenges for people is they feel isolated. When you're only looking at the four walls in your house every day, can really leave you feeling, really kind of blah, and the need to really interact more with people. I know for me, as much as I like my work from home, I like to talk to people. So that's a challenge for me personally, things that I have to do in order to maintain that work from home environment. So for me, the hybrid environment works well because I'm in the office part-time and at home part-time. And again, this is one last slide that talks on figure 11.7 about the benefits and challenges of home-based work. Think about how there's benefits to society. Say for instance, decreased traffic congestion, or from a challenging standpoint, it increases the need to resolve zoning regulations for business deliverables in residential neighborhoods. So lots of things to consider, and it's all gone over in the text on page 296. In order to have a remote workforce, you have to be able to communicate. So some of the communication tools that are used are Google Apps, Skype, Yammer, and Zoom. I know at my organization we also use Microsoft Teams. Ways to collaborate are also Google Docs, GoToMeetings, Dropbox, and again, Microsoft Teams. This slide shows that in some cities you can spend more than a few work weeks stuck in gridlock traffic throughout the year. New York and LA are notorious in the US for traffic issues. Those in Moscow have to normally spend 2.5 to 3 hours in their car. So just to keep in mind, do you think that 2.5 hours to get to and from work is okay, or do you think it's ridiculous? Do you think for those that do have to spend that much more time in the office with the 2.5 hour commute, would it be more beneficial to give those employees more flex time or opportunities for remote work, hybrid opportunities for part in the office, out of the office, or something like that, just to help them be more focused while they're at work versus worrying about the traffic from day to day? Job sharing lets 2 or more part-time employees share one full-time job. Students and parents with small children, for instance, may work only during school hours, and older workers can work part-time before fully retiring or after retiring. Benefits of job sharing include employment opportunities for those who cannot or prefer not to work full-time, an enthusiastic and productive workforce, reduced absenteeism and tardiness, ability to schedule part-time workers into peak demand periods, and then retention of experienced employees who might have otherwise retired. Disadvantages include the need to hire, train, motivate, and supervise at least twice as many people, and perhaps prorate some fringe benefits. But firms are finding there's a lot of advantages but generally outweigh the disadvantages. Many companies find that promotion from within the company improves employee morale. It's also cost effective in that promoted employees are already familiar with the corporate culture, procedures, and don't need to spend a lot of time on basic orientation. In the new, flatter corporate structures, there are fewer levels for employees to reach than in the past. Thus, they often move over to a new position rather than up. Such lateral transfers allows employees to develop and display new skills and learn more about the company overall. Reassignment is one way of motivating experienced employees to remain at the company with few advancement opportunities. Uncertain economic times often can lead to layoffs and firings. Even when the economy is booming, employers are hesitant to bring on a lot of new full-time workers because of the cost of termination. Firing employees is more difficult for employers because there's lots of laws preventing terminations for certain acts. Consultants offer the advice on this slide to minimize the chance of lawsuit for wrongful discharge. Before discharging somebody, prepare before hiring by requiring recruits to sign a statement that retains management's freedom to terminate at will. And in this particular example, it really depends on the state and the federal laws with termination. Don't make unintentional promises by using terms like permanent employee when you offer a new position. Document reasons before firing, so that way there's no question and for the reason for letting somebody go. Always fire the worst people first and be consistent with your discipline actions. To buy out potential litigation by offering severance pay in exchange for a signed release for any claims. And be sure to give employees true reasons why they're being fired, because if you don't, later things can be revealed as a recruiter for asking for references without risking that defamation lawsuit. And finally, disclose the reasons for an employee's dismissal to the person's potential new employers. But you also have to make sure as an HR manager that you're disclosing what's legally allowed. Many of you may never have heard of the term getting a pink slip. Back in the day, and I don't even think this has been a true term since I've even been employed and I'm 50. So it used to be if you're getting your pink slip, you were being terminated. But thinking about termination, as you may have known people during the COVID pandemic, there were a lot of people terminated, which made it really hard for managers and companies. And then also they had to come back and try to rehire these employees as the economy recovered. So, think about what these employers might have had in lieu of termination, maybe decreasing pay or temporarily decreasing pay, maybe slowly decreasing some of the benefits. Maybe they couldn't offer the same kind of benefits going forward just in order to save. Or maybe an employee taking on more work, maybe working more hours instead of bringing on more people in order to save the company money temporarily. One of the things that HR might have to do from time to time instead of, laying people off is to think about retiring employees. Sometimes in order to get people that are close to retirement to retire early, there were companies that would offer like one-time cash payments in order to get employees that were the higher paid employees to retire early. Obviously, there's lots of laws with addressing retirement with employees, but I mean, it's definitely an option for somebody that's really close to retirement and was kind of on the fence about retiring that could financially afford to do it, that might get the ability to downsize the workforce when there's hard times because of the economy or just slow business. As we talked about in previous slides, that some of the best employees leave. So it's important when this happens that HR is conducting exit interviews with those valued employees to really understand the reasons why they're leaving the company, but also to make sure that that information is used well in order to make sure that the company improves on the way that they handle their employees or run the company. Offboarding is the process surrounding those, it's kind of the term used when an employee exits. This slide shows a small sample of some crazy excuses people have for used to get out of work. It's no surprise they're now without jobs. I need to celebrate my dog's birthday and I'm not done decorating. I lost faith in the legal system and needed to flee. I caught my uniform on fire by putting it in the microwave to dry. And as you can see, they're a little bit crazy. And I've heard my share before. I can remember a colleague once claiming that he or she fell because they slipped on their dog's urine, but then the next day they came to work with a sunburn. So they were limping a little, but not enough to miss work, at least in my opinion. Not mine to decide, but and this was a long time ago. It was kind of funny, but not really. All right, so let's review. Can you name and describe 5 alternative compensation techniques? Alternative compensation techniques include commission plans, rewarding employees with a percentage of sales. 2, bonus plans, rewarding employees with payment based on achievement of a predetermined goal. 3, profit sharing plans, which give employees the ability to share in a percentage of a company's profit. 4, gain sharing plans, which is a bonus based on improvements over previous performance. 5, stock options, granting employees shares of stocks based on performance. What advantages do compensation plans such as profit sharing offer an organization? The hope is that the profit sharing plan will motivate employees to think like the owners and perform more efficiently and well. And finally, what are the benefits and challenges of flex time, telecommuting, and job sharing? Flex time benefits include allowing employees to adjust to work-life demands, or what is also known as work-life balance. Challenges of flex time include not being applicable for all businesses, making communication more difficult, and creating the possibility of resentment if employees abuse the system. Telecommuting benefits include cost saving for employers and allows employees to manage work-life balance. Challenges of telecommuting include that it requires disciplined employees to stay focused and communication with employees may suffer. Job sharing benefits include employment opportunities for those who cannot or prefer not to work full-time. It reduces absenteeism and tardiness, retention of experienced workers, and the ability to schedule workers during peak time. Challenges of job sharing include the need to hire, train, motivate, and supervise at least twice as many employees.